The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Father Joseph Sund. Hey, Father.
Good to be with ya.
And Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Dom.
Folks, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Stargate. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Stargate. And get in now because they're just about to start the,
sixth season.
The sixth season where Corin Nemec's character, why did I forget
Jonas Quinn.
Jonas Quinn. I kept wanting to call him Jacob. Jonas Quinn is joining the team, and yes. So if you've ever watched Stargate, you know what I'm talking about. So
yeah, it's one of my favorite seasons.
Yeah. You should be listening to the podcast. All right, enough of that. And I do want to ask one thing of all the listeners. If you have a topic you'd be interested in having us cover on this show, let us know. Send us an email to technology@sqpn.com or on our social media, Facebook or Twitter, or on our Discord at sqpn.com/Discord. Sorry. Let us know of anything you'd like us to cover. If you've been listening at any length of time, you know the sorts of things we've talked about. We can revisit topics, because technology is always changing. Or if there's topics we haven't covered, we would love to, get your feedback and get your interest. And, we've talked about things that were tangentially tech, but the tech of something else, tech of camping we've done, and the tech of the job search and that sort of thing. So let us know what you're interested in, and we'd love to incorporate that into the show. So let us get into our main topic today, which is the latest on teens and social media. And there's been two big reports that have come out in the last month that, no surprise, have major warnings about social media and teens. That's not exactly news to anyone, but there's some specific data and recommendations coming from the U.S. Surgeon General and the American Psychological Association, two separate reports. And we have a great panel for this because I've got teens. Victor, you have teens, right?
Yep, I sure do.
Older and younger, I think.
And younger, yep.
Yeah. And
20s and ones, I guess, or 10s or whatever you want to
20s and singles, which sounds like I'm going to the store. And Father, you teach in a high school. You spend your days teaching teens.
So, yep, exactly.
So you probably actually are more in tune with this stuff than even Victor and I are, to be clear. So let's talk quickly about some of what the Surgeon General and, let's start with the Surgeon General's report. And he's got a pretty down view of social media's effects on teens, basically saying it's a significant mental health risk. And he doesn't come out and say that kids shouldn't use social media, but gosh, does he come close to it? And maybe only doesn't say it because of the political ramifications of if he came right out and said it. What did y'all think of the Surgeon General's warnings?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's things that we've been hearing, at least, rumblings of for years. I mean, as an adult using social media, it wasn't, something that I could say was a net positive necessarily in my own life.
Yeah.
It can make you agitated. It can bring out your worst, tendencies even as an adult, and giving these to these sites and stuff to kids whose brains are still, very malleable. I can definitely see how it would cause a lot of trouble. And it really just speaks to the continued need for parental engagement and what your kids are consuming and participating in.
How about you, Father? What was your impression of this?
I agree with him, and I think he should have went further. If parents hear me over and over, I'm against kids having cell phones before that they can pay for them, smartphones before they can pay for them, and social media accounts. I just don't like them. And so I see daily the impacts that he's talking about, that it is a mental health crisis, and that the way that it affects our teenagers, especially teenage girls. We can get into other topics of what affects teenage boys, but the mental health part, especially on teenage girls, I see it really weighing down on them.
Yeah, part of the report says that one of the conclusions is adolescents who spend more than 3 hours per day on social media face double the risk of experiencing poor mental health outcomes. Okay, double the risk, which is not good because about a third of the respondents who were surveyed are on more than 3 hours a day. Like about a third say they're scrolling constantly, almost constantly. They're engaged with social media. Up to 95% of teens between the ages of 13 and 17 say they use some social media platform, which I think for the purposes of this include things like Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, the big ones. I don't know if they also include smaller platforms that like bulletin boards.
I would add that to that. Snapchat is probably Snapchat's going to be their most used, and TikTok. Right. Those two are going to be the dominant ones currently.
Yeah. I wonder if they include things, because my kids are all in homeschooling, and there's a homeschool organization called Homeschool Connections that has a bulletin board like system that's monitored and by adults and moderated that they can use, which is sort of like a social media platform. So I wonder if that would be included too. It might be, I would think. So yeah, around 95% of teens between the ages of 13 and 17 are on a social media platform. And they get into some details. We'll have a link to the report itself, so you can get into all the nitty gritty, or at least the press release of the report, all the nitty gritty. And some of the recommendations are things like what tech companies need to work with parents to not inflict the algorithm on kids, and policymakers need to put the screws to the tech companies to force them to do this because they won't do it on their own, and that sort of thing. So the other thing I wanted to mention is this article from CNBC that I'm going to link to also mentions how teen depression has risen like meteorically since in the past decade, since 2012, around the time that smartphones started to really get into the hands of everyone, including teens. So I don't know if that's a causation or correlation, but it's a data point.
I would look at the reality if you remember when we were teenagers. I know that's quite a few years back, but when I went to get away from the kids I didn't want to be around, right? There were the kids you always wanted to be around, and you go over to their houses after. But in every school, in every environment, there's those kids that you just don't want to be around. And now they follow you. And you're constantly with them. Whether that means that they're showing up in your Instagram feed or sending you snaps or whatever, the negativity, whether it be bullying or whether it just be someone saying, I don't measure up to her, it's constantly in front of you instead of being able to leave that behind at 3 p.m. when you leave school.
And the obligations that they feel, if you like, I've heard stories about, groups of teen girls who are all friends, and, if someone posts a picture on post something on Snapchat or Instagram, and, there's like a ticking clock till, the friends should all like it and make a comment that's laudatory, and if you don't make that comment in time or whatever, it's like it's I don't know, it's almost like Darwinian. It's scary, and they get stressed about it, and they're on, some of these girls admit to being on the phone all night, like waking up every few minutes to check. I mean, it's insidious.
Yeah, you get addicted to that dopamine hit of somebody liking it, and then suddenly if it's not there, I mean, even as adults, I mean, if we post something on Twitter and it just goes out there and nobody likes it or retweets it, you're like, oh, I guess I had a bad take or something, I need to go into my room and consider my life or something. But it's I don't think it's just kids. I mean, even as adults, but it certainly, kids are the most vulnerable and can be really nasty to each other. When adults do that, usually it's a crime, and you can get the police involved. But for some reason, it's not when
kids do it to each other.
Yeah.
And to be certain, this isn't a side effect of the social media apps. It's actually part of the algorithm. So if I think about Snapchat and the streaks that they have to keep alive, and that's based on the quickness of them liking and replying and things of that nature. And so the very scores that you have on these apps are feeding in to this crisis. And so it's not just, these things are neutral and they're causing these things, but there's this very purposeful molding of the product for it to cause that.
There's an article link from Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who is the CNN's, celebrity doctor, and he does several things for them. He does a podcast, but there's an article about parenting in the era of ubiquitous screens and social media. And he talks about his own teenage daughters, and he says one of the things one of his daughters said is many teens feel an obligation to be on social media or they will feel left behind. Like they don't even necessarily want to be there, but if they don't participate, they're outside the social circle. They're outsiders. They're ostracized. And I remember, I do vaguely remember being a teen and how hard it was to be on the outside alone looking in.
So it's called FOMA, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And that's very real. Whenever we do retreats with teens, we will purposefully have them put phones away and be very deliberate about it. The anxiety of the first 6 to 8 hours of retreats is very real. Usually after about a 6 to 8 hour, and we can get to this more when we talk about some solutions, usually more after that 6 and 8 hours, you see that anxiety start to subside, but it's a very real thing.
Yeah, I mean, the jury duty, they used to take your phones, right? Or if you go into something where there's an NDA, they'll put your phone in those special bags and stuff. And even with adults, there's that anxiety as well. It's like you're losing your right arm or something.
Yeah, I remember taking a tour with the scouts of the Coast Guard district control station, like their central, and it's a secure facility. So as you go in the door, all the phones had to go in these little boxes outside the door, and all the adults were like, but it's okay, you can do it. I mean, I was one of them. I was like, but I don't want to leave my phone behind. Yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, if I drive out of my driveway and to go run an errand to the store half a mile away and come back, if I don't have my phone with me, I'm like, should I turn around and get it? There is a real sense of this is now an essential part of my getting around in life, which I guess it doesn't need to be. I suppose it shouldn't be.
Yeah. If you want a thrill, go to the grocery store and intentionally leave your phone at home. I did that a couple of years ago with our son. I was like, we're going to leave our phones at home and just go to the grocery store without them. Really? Can we do that? Yes, you could do that. Yeah, we can do this. Yeah. What if there's but
that's where my list is and my loyalty card and my payment way. Yeah, I know this become, insidious in a way, invaluable.
There's a really real quote here from that Sanjay Gupta article.
Yeah.
He's talking about how 12th graders are now more like 8th graders from previous generations. As I read that, that's been intensely my experience. The maturity level and the socialization level that I once had from, I always was saying freshman in high school, so I'm not too far off from what he was saying, but that my seniors in high school are at the socialization levels that 10 years ago when I was working with high schoolers, my freshmen would have been at. And so that's very real.
Yeah, he says in this article that they're waiting longer to take part in activities associated with independence and adulthood, according to this one doctor that he interviews. They're less likely to go out with friends, drive, go to prom, or drink alcohol than Gen X 12th graders were, which, okay, the last one is not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm okay with that. But I think what they're pointing at is it's not whether it's a negative or positive. It's a big difference that in concert with everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't see, waiting to get your driver's license or waiting to drink or date as a bad thing at all. I think we were pushed, in Gen X, we were pushed into it, way too young in some cases,
Sure.
Giving it seems crazy now. Like, let's give a 14 or 15-year-old the keys to a car. I mean,
yeah. What are they doing up in Michigan?
Yeah, well, you can start to get your permit and stuff.
Really? In Massachusetts, it's always been 16 and a half.
Yeah, in rural areas, we can have 15-year-olds driving to school.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't have a problem with that. I mean, but on the flip side, it's like we're telling adults not to, mature, that adulting is bad or onerous, and there's a service or something that'll take care of everything for you, and so I mean we're encouraging our kids not to mature, but at the same time, I think that a lot of the sort of milestones that were there when we were kids weren't always super beneficial or healthy either. Right.
But there is there's a later sentence, which is they may be physically safer, but the long-term effect on their mental and brain health is a big question mark. And I think that's really the key point here is, giving out maybe a 15-year-old 40 years ago was more mature than an 18-year-old today. And I would have been okay with them driving around. Maybe. I mean, it feels like in previous ages, when my dad was a kid, 15 was like an adult. I remember what my old pastor, Father Murphy, God rest his soul, was saying. He went back to Ireland where his parents were from, and would go to the church there. And after mass, all the men would be standing outside talking about farming, issues. And the 15-year-olds would be standing there as part of the conversation as equals because they were adult. We have changed a lot from that period in time, and not all of it can be laid at the feet of social media and smartphones, because a lot of this change has happened gradually over time, and TV and other things. But there's certainly, I think, one thing I do see in this generation, I see it in a lot of the scouts I work with, is, and they're better than most because they're actually involved in an outdoor activity, but this tendency to be more passive. One mom told me that she hyper schedules her son in sports and scouts and all these other things, because if she didn't, he would just be sitting at home in front of a screen. And so for her, it's not like, I often get bemoan how sports is a religion in a lot of America today. For a lot of people, it's the one thing that they can hold on to that gets the kid out of the house and away from his phone.
That is very real. That is very real.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, my kids are at home in front of a screen. My 10-year-old is on Tinkercad designing a 3-dimensional award for his teacher that I can print on my 3D printer.
Yeah.
And my 16-year-old, just to give a positive side of and even the Surgeon General's article had some positives about social media, like 80%, feel more connected to what's going on in their friends' lives. 2/3 feel that they could express themselves more creatively via social media. But in my 16-year-old's case, he got into, became part of, various game modding communities and communicates with people over Discord. And this summer, he's releasing kind of the definitive version of a Plants vs. Zombies mod that he's been working on for a couple of years. And he has a project team now of people around the world. He has graphic designers, play testers, and he's basically project managing a release, like a software release over his summer vacation, and has it all scheduled out. And he's
Impressive.
using, he uses YouTube and Discord and various other means to do this. So, I mean, it depends on the kid. Your kid should always feel comfortable being themselves around you as your parents, so that, you can encourage them. And no matter
Right.
what their friends are doing, they know that at home, they're welcomed, and, their family, it becomes like I wouldn't say the only people whose opinion matter to them, but it makes the
most
opinions of the
important.
friends, matter less.
Well, right. I don't want it to be like all technology is evil, because that would be silly for a technology
We'd have
podcast.
to end the podcast.
We're done, folks. See ya. Close up the shop.
Yeah.
But you're right. There are plenty of positive ways to use the technology. A lot of the problems are the uses that are passive, or that drag them into negative social interactions. It's this positive, like, I'll give another example. My oldest daughter is involved in that Homeschool Connections social, the bulletin board, or whatever they call it, for the social network that they have. And she has friends from all over the country, some from even, like, she has a friend in Mexico she's close to. She prays with them all the time. She's learned about other kinds of places and ways of being and cultures, and, like, not just like foreign cultures, but even cultures within our own country. I mean, there's a Midwestern culture and a Southern culture and whatever they do on the West Coast and that sort of thing. There's all kinds of cultures, and she's learning about those. She's become a leader among them. She's had chances. They do a Friday night gamer group where they do, like, different kinds of role-playing games, and it's become a real outlet for her, which, if she were just a regular homeschooler without this, she might not have. We'd have to find other ways of, maybe trying to find some local people, which, also works. It's, it's nice to get in touch with people personally, but there are some positives. You're right. There are some positives from this technology. We just have to be very careful of the negatives, because the negatives can be very negative. So we should probably switch to some of the recommendations. And between the Surgeon General and I mentioned this is an American Psychological Association report that also has some recommendations as well. And they have a list of 10. Some of them are better than others. They, like, for example, their first one, youth should be encouraged to use functions that create opportunities for social support, online companionship, and emotional intimacy that can promote healthy socialization. That's a pretty generic way of saying they should use social media nicely.
I have a good example of this. My senior class that just graduated. Keep in mind, small rural school, so we had 9 kids in the senior class, and it was surprising to me when I found this out, but it made sense. They have a group Snapchat all together of their class, and by and large, there's sometimes they're not good to each other on it. By and large, they're supportive of each other on it. And so, by and large, they're using it to look out for, the kid who forgets what the assignment is, or they know someone had a hard day, and so they're reaching out. Sometimes they're continuing conversations from school that probably would be nice to just stop when they left school. But
right.
But by and large, I think there's moments that they are using that for a positive thing. I think that could be done just as well over iMessage and actually have a record of it, but that can be my soapbox there.
Right. I like this other one, the next one that they offer too, or one of the next ones. They mentioned in early adolescence, so between 10 and 14, adult monitoring is advised for most youth social media use. And as they get older, autonomy can be increased gradually. And I would say at 10 to 14, I don't really think they should be on social media at all. But they should, I think they should be encouraged to dip a toe in starting around 15 to, like, a network, limited amount of time and monitored and have conversations about it with a parent. How's it going? What are you doing there? I know there's the whole like you're required to friend your parent, and that's when they set up the ghost account.
Well, and they completely undermine themselves. I mean, this is the root of the problem. And then they say, however, monitoring should be balanced with youth appropriate needs for privacy. There's no expectation for privacy in my house. I mean,
no,
especially now when it comes to what you're doing with devices. It's this whole, well, we got to let the kids be kids and we got to be buddy with them and all be cool and chill. And that's what leads to this problem. There's no expectation for privacy in my house. I can see your search history. I can see what passes through my router, and I can barge through the door at any minute, And
let's be honest, what the APA is worried about for youth privacy is them getting involved in things that, from our perspective as Catholics, would be morally questionable.
And there's no privacy from Snapchat. There's no privacy from Instagram. They have access to all your kids' data.
Right. Facebook knows more about what your kids are doing than you do if you're not keeping up on top of it. Like, you're right. There is no privacy from the tech companies. And so, yeah, that is it's the APA is infected with this spirit of being suspicious of parents, and that's so you're going to take their recommendations with a grain of salt. That is true.
Victor, to go back to your comment there and kind of pulpit pounding a little bit here, you're not meant to be your children's friends. You're meant to be their parents.
Yeah.
Right. You're meant to raise them. You're meant to discipline them. You're meant to show them and teach them how to grow as a full human person. They are not your equal. A friend is your equal, period. And so there's this duty that you have. And so what's happening when parents do this whole, I'm meant to be the friend of my child and respect their privacy, you're not fulfilling a duty that you have. And so you're actually doing something harmful to them in trying to be a friend to them.
Right. You love them and, and help them to love you and to have fun together. There's nothing wrong with having fun together, but there comes a point where your job primarily is to protect them and help them as they grow until they are capable of taking care of themselves. But by definition, as adolescents, they aren't. Not yet. The next one is also a little bit problematic. The recommendation: to reduce the risks of psychological harm, adolescents' exposure to content on social media that depicts a litany of horrible things, just like self-harm and suicide, should be minimized. How about eliminated? It should be avoided altogether, not minimized. Yeah, but I agree. Technology should not drive users to this content. And that has come up multiple times in our discussions and elsewhere, that a lot of the algorithms out there seem designed to drive stuff that appeals to the worst tendencies of the human heart and soul, of all kinds. I was telling my wife, I look at Instagram and I look at, Ronald Reagan speeches from the past, because I'm a Gen Xer. It's what I'm a conservative Gen Xer. What you sue me. And
there you go again.
Yes, he had some great singers, and Star Wars and Star Trek stuff, that sort of thing. But every once in a while, Instagram starts shoveling pictures of beautiful young ladies into the feed, and that's when I have to get out, because it get thee behind me, Satan. You know what I mean? I'm just being honest here. That stuff is if I'm seeing it, what is the 15-year-old seeing, and what's he doing? He's continuing to scroll into that stuff, and they have access to all that. And there's some, they're beautiful young ladies, but they're not appropriate what they're doing for these kids. And the algorithm is shoving it at them, and not just prurient stuff, but also dangerous stuff having to do with, stunts and, other bad behaviors and punking people in horrible ways and bullying behavior. And it's shoveling this content at them. The tech companies bear responsibility for how much they're shoveling this sort of thing at their users of all ages.
Yeah. And then on both sides of the spectrum, right? So if I have a older high school that becomes politically involved, right, and maybe he has more conservative views, the algorithms of these things are going to lead him to the most extreme of those views.
That's
and
true.
so then you get them in these neo-Nazi views and all of that end up coming up.
Or the other direction too.
Or the other
right.
direction that they're going pure communism, right? All roads lead to socialism pretty much. But well, all roads lead to nihilism, really, right? That it becomes a self-focused thing.
They lead to isms.
Isms.
Right. And a lot of this identity stuff that's been going on is fed by this as well. The kids' fluid identities. I don't want to necessarily get into all the politics of that, but a lot of this stuff, the trans stuff, the non-binary, the kids who are like identifying as different things, all of that, much of that is being fed by what they're seeing on social media and being fed to them by these algorithms. So we have to be careful, and we have to. So part of it is we need to have conversations with our kids, not just about technology use, but about the world. Sit down and talk about your values and the things that are important to you and how you see the world, and help them to see that maybe this is the better way to evangelize them for one thing is part of it. That's an important part.
Social contagion, that theory is social contagions are very real, and you have to treat them just like you would any other infectious disease, inoculate yourself against it as best you can. And then, when you come into contact, wash it off of you as quickly as you can and don't spread it.
At a topic that comes a little more sensitive, but there is another pandemic inside this of the viewing of adult content by teenagers, especially by teenage boys. And this has fed into it. And there is a very real reality that there's young men who are trying to get away from it. And the use of social media keeps drawing them back into it. And so if you're a parent and you say, certainly my boy's not the one looking at adult content, get your head out of the clouds and stop lying to yourself.
Because it's everywhere.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Imagine if it had been this accessible when you were 15 or whatever, right? Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to make light of it, but, when I was 15, you had to, one of your friends had to find his dad's magazine that was hidden in the back of a closet, and then, that was it in a magazine. The stuff kids have access to now is pure evil in a pipe, it's just so. And
it's
awful.
Designed to be as addictive. I mean, you talk about the algorithm, it's like, what
it's
they say,
crack.
pornography is 10 times as addictive as cocaine, right? Or something. And now you have this algorithm that's basically developing new types of cocaine whenever you want it. So,
right.
So you're giving your kid $10,000 and setting him loose in Vegas is basically
right.
a little worse, actually.
Yeah.
So
my 10-year-old would walk out with $2 million at the end of the week, counting cards or something. But you figure it out. But
let's not encourage this then.
Yeah, we won't. Yeah.
But so it's just this reality of not minimizing, reducing. We need to be eliminating these things.
Right. And I really want to drive home the point. Social media is a gateway to pornography. There are a lot of if you spend any amount of time on social media, and I spend a lot of time in my work on social media, you will start to see corners of these social media platforms which are filled with pornography, like straight up porn. I'm not sure how, when it's supposedly in violation of their standards of the terms of service of these different networks, but also that they often use them as links to their more explicit content. So, you see the girl in the bikini and she says, now click on my OnlyFans link to come see the rest of my content. And I mean, let's not get started on OnlyFans. That's a whole scary corner of our society. But nevertheless, it's there. It is. And so social media is that front doorstep to that sort of thing. And that's why it is so important that you be on top of, especially your boys, but your girls too. It's affecting more and more girls too, but to be on top of that. And it is. I'm glad you brought it up, Father, because it is important to understand. I want to kind of wrap some things up a little bit with some just a few final things. One of the things from the Sanjay Gupta article that he talks to a child psychologist. He says that for many of his patients, the children that he sees for problematic use of social media and technology, he says for many of them, overusing technology itself isn't the problem. It has become a sort of self-soothing behavior, a therapy, if you will, to mitigate other underlying conditions like anxiety or depression that need to be addressed. And I see that in my own house. I have kids who have clinical diagnosed anxiety disorders, and the use of screens can often become a sort of self-soothing. Takes them away out of their world, out of the anxious thoughts, and they can, get into a game, or in positive ways. Like my daughter loves to draw, and she has an iPad with a pencil, and she spends a lot of her time drawing on it. And that's it's art. I mean, it's, instead of a paintbrush in paper and paint, she uses the iPad. So that's not in itself a problem, but over obsessing into things can become a symptom of a deeper issue. And so that's something to keep in mind.
Yes. And yeah, so the chemical releases, right, that they receive from these make it even more soothing, right? So there's proof in scientific studies when they get that light, there's a hit of dopamine.
Yeah.
And that's going to help soothe a little bit of anxiety for a moment, right? But what it does long term is it makes that anxiety crash even harder.
Right.
And so this reality of anxiety, I'm passionate about the anxiety and technology thing because it's one of my most common conversations with high schoolers is around anxiety. Right. And just the pressures that are on them are far more than any of us had when we were in high school.
And even if your kid is homeschooled, it can be there too. I see it myself. The pressures are different, but there are anxiety. There are things that bring anxiety about, and sometimes that anxiety is genetic, or there's a physical issue in the brain, a mental health issue or that sort of thing. But you're right. There's a lot of anxiety in kids, and some of it's caused by the technology and social media, and some of it is the technology and social media are symptoms of that deeper problem. So it's both. And any other advice that we want to give to parents as we wrap up this segment? Communication
and honesty.
Yeah.
So there's a thing of like, I have to be a friend with my kid, whatever, but that I disagreed with. But there is a thing of you don't have to be perfect. And showing weakness to your own teen children is actually a good thing.
Vulnerability.
So yeah. Vulnerability, right? It's maybe not weakness, but vulnerability. So for example, dads, maybe you've had a struggle with adult content, right? Being able to say to your son, right, this stuff leads me into a bad place, stay away from it, right? And being open about that, and not being secretive about it. You don't have to be over disclosing and creepy, right? But at an appropriate level to have a vulnerability that I'm a weak human being too, and I need to set up guidelines for myself. I need to set up restrictions for myself. I think that can serve conversation and relationship with your kids far more than anything else.
Talking to them about social media literacy, technology literacy, those are all important precursors to giving them a phone. That's another one I would say. Victor?
I'm reminded of how my dad kept me off of drugs when I was an adolescent. He told me if he ever found dope in the house, he would poison it. That's probably not as helpful, but he worked in a federal prison for most of his adult life. So
he understood.
I just head on a swivel, look alive, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and everything. Everything we've said already.
So basically, do what you would do if you were in a federal prison.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes open, your head on a swivel, look alive.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, I'm sure we will be revisiting this topic again, and I'm sure there are folks out there who have advice for us and have questions that we could discuss in future episodes. So please let us know. technology@sqpn.com. So before we move on, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Paul B., Stephen B., Lawrence S., Carla C., and Lori V. Their generous tax-deductible donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So, speaking of spending too much time on screens, let's go to our first headline, which is Millennials spend more time playing video games than Gen Z and teens. All right, Millennials, you're up next. So,
that's me.
Yeah, that's right. So
the resident millennial here.
It's funny. This is sort of the way that this survey is phrased is sort of like this is a positive. So I'm not sure, but it says the report found that 52% of millennials surveyed rank playing video games as their top interest, and 40% of them spend over 22 hours per week gaming. And that compares with 29% of tweens who spend more than 22 hours per week gaming. That's a lot of time, 22 hours, if you think about it. That's 3 hours a day.
Where was this? Yeah, user data from fandom.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, were they querying already game players at that point? But
yeah,
they
are.
Right. Compiled based on proprietary user data from fandom.com, which I'm not even sure what that necessarily means, and a global study. There's a lot of questions about the methodology, and that's the thing you got to do with surveys, by the way, that you see in the news, folks. Question the methodology, how they get this information, and that sort of thing. So
the attention span of some of the games that we were playing as millennials compared to I don't want to sound overly harsh here, but the attention span of Gen Z. The fact that, I have a game that there's a quest that takes 25, 30 hours to complete, right? And I have to play that for a few months to beat the game, right? Compared to the games that they want to play that are going to be quick and done.
Well, that's what they say. The Gen Z is the most likely to play battle royale, racing, and survival games. So fast, Twitch, that sort of stuff. Millennials, and this is millennials today, not millennials when they were that age. This millennials today that they're talking about. They gravitate toward multi MMO, multiplayer, open world sort of things, strategy and RPG genres. Things like Elden Ring and World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I know a lot of Gen Z now don't so much play games as watch other people play games on Twitch and stuff, and they're very popular streamers. I've watched them as well, and maybe even playing video games now is too immersive, and it's just easier for them to experience the game, by watching someone else play it.
It's like watching TV now.
People watch other people play sports, so why not?
Right.
Have people watch other people play video games, right? So, but yeah, it is. And then there's some hope though with the younger generation coming up with their Minecrafts and their Roblox. It sounds like the tweens and stuff are recapturing some of that Gen X and millennial appetite for gaming. According to the study, it looked like once you get through Gen Z and their Twitch streams, younger kids are starting to get back into it.
So I love with gaming that I can pull in a blessed of the church now. So blessed Carlo Acutis, right?
Yes.
I was telling our high schoolers about how he would limit himself to 1 hour of gaming a week. Because he knew that it would drag him down on his own spiritual growth. And then we were talking about how one of his favorite games was Pokemon. It didn't register with them as much as it did with me of how long that would take to beat the game of Pokemon. at 1 hour a week. It might take you the entire year.
Until the next one came out.
Yep, which we who played it as kids remember, 4 summer days sitting down and beating the entire game, and then you were done with it. And so that didn't register with them. Like, it was one of those like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So one of those like, I can see that they didn't see it as weird as I did, of the virtue of only an hour of gaming a week that was seen in Carlo, and that isn't quite the same.
Yeah. I know that there was a story earlier this year looking at ABC News, China keeping 1 hour daily limit on kids' online games.
Yep.
So China was attempting at some point to limit the amount of time kids were spending playing their Epic games or whatever they play over
Remember,
there. So,
China doesn't let their kids use TikTok.
Right.
Yeah, their own app. Yeah.
So, yeah, when I was in college, I remember trying to limit the amount of time I was spent playing Marathon. You guys remember Marathon from Bungie,
Mm-hmm.
the precursor to Halo? Oh, man, that was hard to limit myself at times. There were some finals exams that I might have done better on if I'd...
I remember my friend's dad had a method of limiting gaming, which you couldn't do now, in which he had cut the end off the TV power cord. And when it was his allowed time to game, he would put the cord, he had one of those clip-on lamp cords, right?
Oh,
Yep.
no.
He put the cord
Yeah.
back on the TV. And so that was his way of limiting his gaming. I don't think that's quite the way you can do
I thought you
things.
said you had
Yeah.
one of those like old rotary light timers, right? That you used to do to like turn lights on and off when you're not at home. And
We
I mean,
we may have discovered later in high school that we could just go to the hardware store and buy that same plug-in and learn how to do wiring. So
you learned a skill, a valuable
Yeah.
skill. That's great.
hopefully his dad doesn't listen to this podcast. He might.
Statute of limitations has expired.
It's been 20 years.
and what's your interest now? Connecting things with wires. So
There you go.
Yeah.
So, moving on to our next headline. I like this one. Google smart speakers are finally smart enough to shut up.
yeah,
So this is a problem with all of these little smart speakers, smart assistants around our home, is they won't stop talking. I will sometimes tell Alexa or Siri to turn on lights or something. Alexa's worse at this, which is
Oh my goodness.
where turn on the lights. I could also no, I don't care. Stop talking. Or there are times where we're having let's say a voluble family discussion, and Alexa just pipes up in the corner and wants to join in with some inanity related to something Amazon wants to sell me, and I'm just like, in my best Scottish accent, Alexa, shut it!
shut it,
And-
head,
and she-
move.
Heed. This way, Marin expert will reference this.
Alexa is a preschooler.
Yes,
Yeah.
in the sense of
I mean,
constantly butting into conversations. Yes. Well, apparently the Google Nest speakers they've got them so that they're doing less chattering at you. Like, so when you tell it to, like, there is a setting in Alexa where you can tell it turn on the lights, and it won't say I've turned on the lights for you, where it will just do it and not. So there is a setting there. So that's good. Google has added this. Apple's now going to do it because it annoys me to no end when I tell Siri, turn on the fan. I've turned on the fan for you. Yeah, I know, because the fan's now blowing. Like, you don't need to tell me that you turn on the fan.
or worse is, I've turned on the fan for you. Did you know that I can do morning routines?
Right. Like, I'm just trying to go to bed. Stop talking to me.
Now we
Yeah.
need someone to redub all the Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes whenever they ask the computer to do something. make Majel Barrett Roddenberry talk back to everybody.
There was a recent episode of the original series that we talked about in Secrets of Star Trek, Tomorrow is Yesterday, where they go back to the 60s and encounter, they become a UFO, and it's a whole fighter pilot thing. But there's this B story where the Enterprise's computer has been modified by these technicians from this a female matriarchy world where it now addresses Kirk as yes, dear.
Oh, yeah.
It's all flustered. It's hysterical. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Alexa. They've Alexa.
Now I am worried that our computers stop talking to us, because that is the end of I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that for you.
Yes. When it starts saying I'm sorry, I can't do that for you, that's what I start.
And then it just stops talking to you altogether. We're done. The world's over.
Yes. So, and then our third headline is kind of an interesting one. Tech companies are finally firing tech workers, which is kind of a weird pseudo positive spin. But basically, software engineers are the biggest portion of tech layoffs in 2023, according to Vox.com, where they've been basically a lot of these companies have been laying off other people in other areas, but they finally started, taking it to the software engineers, the programmers, because a lot of these places have been sort of hoarding their engineers. Because once you let these people go, it's almost impossible to get them back. I mean, that's one of the things. A layoff is, in the olden days, they would lay off the guys at the steel mill. They'd go home and they'd wait a few weeks, and then they'd bring them back because, you're just being temporarily furloughed. But a layoff these days is go find another job. And that's going to be a kind of a problem. It's a bit of a brain drain for these companies that can ill afford it, like Meta and Google.
There were stories about them getting employees and keeping them, that there were some employees of software engineers that were sitting in offices for 4 or 5 months, not being given any work to do because they just wanted that good employee and that sought after programmer on their crew.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any projects for them to do. And so that speaks to your thing that they were stockpiling employees, and now they're letting some of that stockpile go, maybe.
Right.
It's good news for everybody else, though, because, every industry needs just about, if you're doing anything at all with technology, like software developers, data scientists, data engineers, software engineers. So, it's good news now that finally some of these people will be hitting the market for, all these companies and industries where they've had open, positions that they haven't been able to fill.
And when a software engineer gets laid off and doesn't go to another company, they often make startups and they start innovating new apps and technologies and stuff. And some of the best technology we have today is stuff made by people in that sort of position.
I want to be clear on one part of this, because parts of the article suggest that it might be a thing with, it is not AI replacing coding jobs yet.
Not yet.
I played around with AI encoding and asked ChatGPT to write me a piece of Python code, and getting deep into the nerd weeds here. There's certain things that you have to import into code for it to work. It doesn't understand those, and some of the things it was importing, libraries it was bringing in, have been deprecated for 5 years, right? No longer used. And so its understanding of writing code is very
rudimentary.
Yeah, rudimentary. Yeah. And so I could see it writing short pieces, but writing an entire program or things, no.
AI is not taking anybody's job yet. There's still the question of, will it eventually take some jobs from some people? Maybe. But right now, it's not taking anybody's job yet. I did use ChatGPT this morning, by the way, for a very fun thing. My son is taking programming courses, just starting with Tinker.com, which is a great service. And he was asking me the difference between if not and until statements. And I was floundering around. I'm like, wait, ChatGPT, explain to a 12-year-old boy the difference between if not and until. And it did. And he's like, oh, I get it. And he kind of repeated back to me in his own words. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. So if you ever get in a situation where you're like, I need to explain this thing in terms that a child can understand, sometimes for an adult, you know what I mean? Sometimes that's even good for an adult to have it phrased the way a child would understand. That's a great use. Just
remember when
throw that out there.
when I was that age and I was trying to program my games on my Commodore 64 and I got stuck on like the concept of a variable. And
Yep.
I asked my, at the time, 82-year-old grandmother, what's a variable? And, God bless her, she did her best to explain it.
If only Grandma had ChatGPT.
Yeah.
All right. So those are our headlines this week. And let's move on to our picks of the week. Victor, you're up with the best pick yet.
Yeah. So 2 or 3 weeks ago, Nintendo released a little game called The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which is a follow-up to their hit game from about 6 years ago called The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And if you've ever already played Breath of the Wild, you probably are playing Tears of the Kingdom now. It's that game, but better and bigger in every conceivable way. And into this game, Tears of the Kingdom, Nintendo has really poured every bit of expertise making games over the last 45, 50 years. Everything fun that you can easily pick out. This is from Super Mario Sunshine. There's bits of their DNA in every aspect of this game, but just the exploration, there's crafting, there's a physics engine, there's a really good story about self-sacrifice to defeat evil. How evil persists across the ages, and it's up to everybody at different stages to fight it. It's a really great game, a lot of fun. Everybody in our house has been playing it for the past 3 weeks now, and from our 8-year-old to our 20-year-old to my wife and me, and we're all approaching the game in different ways. It's a game that you can say, I want to fight monsters, or I just want to explore this vast world, or I want to create weird cars and boats and see what happens if I, stick all these machines together. But yeah, it's very hard to describe. I don't want to, give too much away, but it's worth, if you haven't picked up a Switch yet, and granted we're very late in the console's life cycle, it's still worth picking up a Switch and playing this game, because it really is, I think, the pinnacle of gaming over the last 45 or 50 years or so.
Man, you got to kill me here, Victor.
Sorry. It's I wasn't expecting it to be this good. I was expecting it to be good, but yeah, it's really good.
I just got a Steam Deck. Now I'm going to have to get this too. Oh, well, you're not the only one. In fact, I have not heard a single bad thing about this game, from a single bad review, single person saying, it could have been better. Like, none of that. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. Every time I think I've seen everything, and I don't want to say how many hours I've already played it. But it's every time I think I've seen, there's some new thing opens up, or there's some mechanic that I hadn't discovered yet, and it just takes you off in different directions. It's a really good experience, and if you can play it with other people in your household, I really recommend that. It's great to say, hey, well, where are you? Like, what? Wait, where did you find that thing? Oh, over there. Let me look at your map. Okay. It's a really good social game to play with kids and adults as a family.
Awesome. All right, I'm in it's in my cart, so I'm ready to check out. But I'll wait till the end of the show to check out. All right, Father, what are you going to cost me today?
Mine's cheap.
Yay.
Okay.
Mine's cheap. So mine will only cost you $24. Is that a little better than
a little better?
Having to buy a
That is much cheaper than
Switch?
Yes.
Okay, so mine is called the Sleek Socket extension cord, and what it is it's an extension cord that hides the outlet, basically. So use case for me is I have our network switch, so the thing that runs all the cords to get the internet to all of our computers in our building, and it's elevated up, but the power outlet is way down close to the floor, right? So I would have an extension cord running down there, and sometimes cleaning ladies might unplug the internet and shut everything down. And so this gave me a way to put something on there that looks like it's permanently supposed to be there and doesn't look like a plug. So it's putting a box over the outlet.
It's like a flat cover, even like a flat outlet cover.
Yep. And just you can buy it both on the regular with the outlet down or the outlet inverted.
Yes.
So
That's
with
handy,
the third prong at the bottom or the third prong at the top. Now, I have the third prong at the bottom, but I bought the inverted so that my cord could run upwards.
Up the wall,
Right.
flat against
Yep.
the wall.
They even have one where the cord goes both ways. So like if you have a
Yep.
TV that's up and a
Yep.
receiver that's
Right.
down, that's neat.
And so the other thing is it comes with all your mounting covers and tape. And so you're able to mount the cord to the wall and give it a nice little cord management. So
Socket.
for those who really like cord management, which spoiler, I think Dom does as well,
Yeah.
this is a great product. Really cleaned up the area.
Yeah, I mean the big thing is anytime you have, because most cords, they stick out, right? The power cord, the wire comes straight out of the outlet, out of the wall. And so even if it folds down, there's still a good 3-4 inches there. And if it's behind furniture and you're pushing the furniture up against it and now you're crimping it or you can't get it all the way there, some of them, there are some power cords, they sometimes are, angled or whatever. But this is a nice, sleek solution, especially, if it has to be out in public. I love the fact that they thought through this and said, oh, like inverted outlets, because my whole house has inverted outlets. I think it's a thing you do when it's a renovation. You put the outlets in upside down.
Certain levels of code, especially if there were ever window air conditioners in there.
Yeah.
It's for when heavier objects fall, the inverted outlet stops the plug from pulling out. It has to pull out the ground first, basically.
I see.
If
I
that
see what
makes
you're saying.
sense.
Right. Oh, I can see that. So, right, because if it pulls out at the top of those, you get the two live there, things can fall
Yep.
down and cause a short circuit. Sure. But in any case, they've thought through it and they have ones for every sort of eventuality. I'm surprised they don't have ones going left and right out of it. Maybe that's coming next.
They do have dual that 2 cords can come out of it. And the extension cord that comes out of it has 4 outlets on it. So
Yeah.
it's not just a single outlet extension cord. It gives you a power strip with 4 outlets. I do not believe it has surge protection or anything on that. It's just an extension cord.
Right. They do sell one with a surge protector on it, but that's a specific model. Wow, this is very nice. It's a great idea. I'm tempted to buy one for throughout my house, but that would be more expensive than a Switch. So I'm getting the Switch. So there's logic in that somewhere. Speaking of power cords, mine is also a power cord related pick. These are very simple. They are short power extension cords. So it's not exactly a pigtail. And it's not a male-to-male adapter. That's a very bad thing to have.
Yeah.
Don't do that. No, what it is it's basically a 8-inch long power extension, electrical extension. So, because the problem we have with a lot of our devices that we have today is they come with these big, thick bricks at the end that plug into the outlet, and they take up multiple spaces. They're like me on an airplane, I'm kind of overflowing. I'm a big guy. I'm kind of, pushing on the people next to me. I don't actually overflow onto those seats, but a lot of these bricks take up space. So what this does is it pushes the brick away from the outlet and it allows you to have just the plugs going in. You're going to kind of see it, but it's basically a power cord that's 8 inches long. And it's got, the male on one end, the female on the other. And I've bought... So this package that I'll link has 10 in it. I've actually bought 2 packs. I've used so many of them because it is fantastic. Once you start using them, you find so many places where this works. I mean, if you use the sleek outlet that Father mentioned, you might not need it as much, but certainly this was very handy. So you get 10 of them for $20, so $2 each, which is a pretty good deal. And the one I'll link is just one example. There's all kinds of others that are, other brands on Amazon that you can find that do the same thing. And they have 4 packs, 10 packs, ones that have lighted ends to tell you when this live power and that sort of thing. So,
These are great. I've been using these sorts of things as well. Especially if you have a lot of music equipment or something, everything comes with a transformer brick nowadays, and your 8 outlet surge protector suddenly becomes a 3 outlet surge protector. But if you use one of
Exactly.
these, you'll have access to, and you can kind of, flip the cables around so the transformers are behind the surge protector. They're not as much in the way. These things are great. Yep.
I was excited that these were, from the picture of them, they looked like they were the power cables that go into the back of your monitors and computers, but it's a different head there. But they do make short ones for that as well.
Right.
So
Yes. And the other nice thing is sometimes it's even just useful to have a little extra power cord because sometimes the outlet you're plugging into is in an inaccessible place, and this gives you just enough to be able to get at it a lot easier. That's another use case as well. All right, so those are our picks of the week, and and that'll do it for us this time. We would love to get your feedback on anything we've discussed today. We would love to hear from you. You can do that by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. And you can find links from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC214, Tech214. Remember, we'd love to also hear from you if any ideas for topics that you'd like us to approach in the future. Be sure to write a review of the show in Apple Podcasts or any of the podcast directories where you can do that, and share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community and reach more listeners. Until next time, Victor Lambs, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thanks, Dom.
Father Josephson, thank you as well.
thank you.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.